Good evening, council, senior leadership team, residents of the town. I see we have quorum, so I call to session this regular council meeting for Monday, October 7th. And when we sing the national anthem, we are doing things a little differently now. We will be standing and we can listen to the national anthem, but of course feel free to join along if you wish. And we will do that now, please. Yep. So we have the approval of agenda, and I believe we have some additions. Councilor Trophy.
Yes, I'd like to make Councilor's verbal report in regards to the Cannabis Control Committee. If you can add that to the...
Thank you.
Please.
And so that would be on these, Madam Clerk?
Item 11.1.
So this will be on the council report, item 11.1, and I believe, yes, Councilor Hahn.
Under section 13, new business, discussion about lawn signs and pertaining to our sign bylaw.
Thank you for that. So now we'll vote. Any other additions? No, don't see it. Okay, and we'll vote on the amended agenda. All those in favor? All those against? So the amended is approved. And now, we have to vote on the agenda as amended.
The amendments, we should have a separate vote on the amendments and then
Yeah,
the agenda.
okay, well, we just voted on the amendments now. Let's be, so on the agenda as amended, I'm sorry I left out one step. So on the agenda as amended, all those in favor? Excellent. All those against? And motion carries. Excellent. Thank you. Oh, yes, so we have presentations. Number 4, pecuniary interest. After looking at the agenda, is there any counselor who must declare or feels that they should declare pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Not seeing any, I ask the clerk to please note. Number 5 is hearing of presentations, delegations, and regional report. First on the agenda is the tax write-off under Municipal Act, Section 357 and 358. First of all, I will ask, is there anyone present that would like to make a comment on this part of the agenda? Yes, sir. Please approach and state your name.
Hi, I'm Stephen Beta, and I'm here on behalf of my father, Henry Beta, property owner at 952 Foss Road in Fenwick. And so in relation to this section 357 and 358, the tax write-off, so we have a particular concern on this issue. Over the last several years, since my dad's been retired and living on pension, we've filed a couple of vacancy applications for the property. So without commercial activity, he hasn't had any income. So we applied for the vacancy and were advised that this would be addressed tonight, and that Victoria Bragshaw, the tax clerk, had advised us that the write-offs can only be for a gross or manifest error in the preparation of the assessment roll that is clerical in nature, not for any error in judgment or assessing property. Just wanted to say that we had no idea, basically, that we could have been eligible for a residential rate as opposed to a tax rate, because he lives at the property, and the vacancy permits that have been, or vacancy applications have been made a couple of times, and the tax rate had been changed, but not for residential only applications. So we feel kind of misled and not properly informed maybe by the town that we could have done this earlier and saved considerable amount of tax on this property. Only by chance that we had found out from Jason Wilson from MPAC that we could apply and have a residential rate applied. So we respect the fact that the town is considering a reduction at this time for the tax rate for present year, 2019. But the property has been vacant since 2017 January, and don't understand why it wouldn't be going for further time and further back in time. And even there was other periods before that the property was not under commercial activity as well. So anyways, that's the situation.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps can I ask the CAO, or
That's the first, although I know the policy answer. I don't know the specifics, whereas Ms. Quinlan.
perhaps the Director of
Through
Finance.
you, Mr. Mayor, I did have a chance to talk to the tax clerk, and she said that there's very specific legislation in the Municipal Act, which is what we have to follow. And, according to MPAC, the Section 357 and 358 applications are only, as you mentioned, only available for a gross manifest error or not an error in judgment. So it's the year that you actually apply, and the year you apply was 2019. And so it's MPAC saying that we can't go back to 2017 and 2018. So it's not the town making the decision, it's MPAC making the decision. And also, I think that you also received reductions in the previous years for the vacant commercial unit property, which is a 30% reduction for the vacant land. So that was received for this property.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Trophy?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, this question would be to the Director of Finance. Would Mr. Beta be able to appeal that with MPAC to go back to 2017?
I think you want to ask that?
Staff can't really give a direct answer because that would constitute legal advice. So that's certainly something every well-informed citizen ought to explore, but we just can't answer that question.
Okay, fair enough.
Any other questions on that?
So just for clarification, specifically on this one or the other assessments, can I ask about those?
Start specifically with this
Okay.
one. Okay. No other questions? Okay, now let's move on to the other ones that are being discussed under this 5.1. Any other questions on these other ones? Councillor Wink?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So looking at the same comment that was made about going back a number of years, if we look at the property on 2 Longspur, they're asking for relief over a 3-year period. So how is it that they can ask for relief for 3 years and the one on Foss Road not?
Director of
Through you,
Finance?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I'm just looking here. There are two different situations. One is the structure was demolished, so it was demolished in 2017. And the other one is, the one on Foss Road is a class change. And so there are different rules for different reasons.
So
They're not the same.
if I demolish a property, how far back can I go to?
I don't know that. I would have to look that up.
Actually, I don't know offhand either.
No, I'm afraid we don't have an answer for that one.
Yeah. But right now, I mean, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's impact that determines when we can go back or not. It's not the town. So they're the ones that do the assessment and say how far we can go back.
So do we know, in fact, we can go back 3 years for demolished structures?
Yes, because impact would have approved this, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
that's correct.
Is that good, Council?
Thanks.
Any other questions? Do I have oh, this one? Okay. Not seeing any other debate. Motion put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hahn, that council receive the taxes write-off report from Corporate Services Department and the council approve the tax written off report in the amount of $24,882.60 as per the Municipal Act, Sections 357 and 358. Any other debate? I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. Presentations, 5-2. So the first presentation to be done by the Niagara Region Transportation Services discussing their 5-year forecast. That presentation has been postponed. They didn't get their presentation completed in time. So the next presentation is the 5.22, the budget impact presentation by our treasurer, Ms. Quinlan.
You, Mr. Mayor, so I'm here tonight to talk about the budget impact. So to prepare council for the 2020 operating budget, you've received the capital budget, and we came here and presented that last week. Next week, council will receive the operating budget binders, and that also includes the water, wastewater. So this is just a preliminary, just to give you a bit of a heads up of what are some of the issues that we're facing. So the provincial landscape, there's still some uncertainty with some of the grant allocations. Not all the announcements have been made for the 2020 capital grants. There's still some grants that are under review before announcements are being made. It's better than last year. I think last year, a lot of the grants we didn't know, so we know a bit more this year. And so the 2020 assumption for the budget is that we're assuming the same level of grants we received in 2019. Except for any of the one-time grants that were received. There's a couple grants that we received this year that were just for one time only. So for example, we received double the gas tax this year, so the province has said that we're not getting that next year. There was the modernization grant of about $750,000 we received this year, that we're not going to be receiving in 2020. So the best information that we know is what's going to be included in the 2020 budget. The budget impacts. The transit will have approximately a $42,000 budget impact compared to 2019. This will be with a full year operation of the second bus. And the staff right now, we're looking at partnering opportunities in order to lower these costs. We are working with the Niagara region, and I think there's going to be a presentation October 21st. On October 21st, from the region to talk about the transit and what's happening with the regional transit and the transit in Pelham. So you'll get more information at that point. So 2020 is the second year of operating the MCC facilities. There's been tremendous work done by the Utility Sustainability Committee in reducing the hydro. So right now, when this presentation was done 2 weeks ago and submitted, we fine-tuned it. But the hydro numbers will be at least $100,000 lower than last year's budget. I think it's a bit more now, but this is at the time when we did this presentation, so that's really good news. Last year in 2019, the town made a one-time transfer to the MCC from the MCC reserve of $425,000. We can't do it for 2020, but we've been able to allocate $100,000 of a transfer of a reserve transfer from the MCC. So that came from the grant money that we received this year for the MCC. That was about $150,000. We put that into a reserve, and we're going to take about $100,000 of that to towards the MCC for 2020. So it sort of helps to decrease the impact of not having $425,000. When we present the MCC budget, I think you'll be really pleased to see how much work has been done as far as bringing the cost down. There's, you know, it's been good. So the town will incur an increase for insurance, and at the time when I did this slides, we were anticipating WSIB increase. Now we know that we don't have a WSIB increase, so that's good news about that. So since then, we found out that our rates are not going to go up. The cost of living increase is approximately 2%. That's what we're using. The property tax growth number is announced in November. So right now, because we're so much earlier with bringing the budget to council, we actually have to project what the growth number will be. Last year's growth was 2.01%, which is approximately $252,000 of new revenue. We're assuming a 1.75% for the 2020 budget that's coming to council next week. And that's, I would say, it's on the conservative side, but it's better to be conservative than to have an impact to the budget. For 2020, the reserve transfers will increase by $440,000, and this includes the transfers to the water and wastewater as well. And if you recall, at the capital budget presentation, we talked about why we needed to increase the transfer to the reserves, because some of the reserves are in a negative balance, and also because of the capital expenditures that we have. The debenture principal and interest will increase by $181,000 because this is the full year in 2020 for the new debt of the $4 million that was issued in 2019. So, to recall, where do my property taxes go? I always like to show everyone the slide here that, you know, it's only about 39% of a taxpayer's taxes that actually goes to the town, towards the town's expenses. There's the region, and then there's the education component. So that's the portion that we're looking at as far as the operating budget. So a 1% increase to the tax levy is about $137,000 of additional revenue to the budget of 2020. So the impact to a taxpayer, and these numbers here are before growth, is that if there's an increase of, you know, about 6%, then it's a $65 a year increase to the average household. So, so that's sort of like the number that you need to look at as opposed to what the percentage is. If it's after growth, then a 6% increase is where the 8% is, because you're taking the 2% off, is about $104,000. So that's so it sounds like a lot with the increases, but when you look at what the actual amount is for a whole year of an increase, it's the number is not as large as you would think the percentages. So the 2020 impact to the average, this is what the 2020 impact was to the average household, and once the 2019 growth number is released in November, we'll have a better idea and we'll update those numbers. So still some things that are outstanding in the budget. One would be council still needs to determine the gypsy moth expense for the 2020 budget. And so right now what we have in the budget is what we had last year, which is the $25,000. And I know that council wanted to first wait to hear from the open house on October 23rd for the gypsy moths. And then I think you can give the staff direction on what to do after that. So, so that's the level that we currently have in the budget. The library has submitted the request, and it's a 7.73% increase, and that's right now what's in the 2020 operating budget that you're going to see next week. And then the employment costs consisting of new staff and inflationary increases is about $300,000, and that's incorporated in the budget that's coming. And that's the summary.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions on the presentation? Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the reserves, will we be having any policies, new policies
Yep.
developed? Or when will
Yeah,
those be
so as
presented?
soon, we're wrapping up the budget this week, and we're starting those next week.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
they're in by the end of this year. That's the goal.
Thank you.
And the debt policy too, reserve and debt.
Councillor Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Can you just explain just a little bit on that transit? Transit will have up to $42,000 budget impact compared to 2019 with a full year of operation of the second bus. I just want to get that clear. Staff is looking to partner with opportunities to lower the cost, but I understand that when we passed that for the second bus, it was going to be through the grant.
Right, and that's part of the grant is there. So we still have, we received $100,000 of grant money for 2019, and then 4 years after, we're still gonna get 100,000. That's the net increase right now that we have.
So that $42,000 is above?
Yes, yes. Now, whereas on the 21st, when the region comes here, we just had some new discussions. We're looking to see how we can minimize that.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other questions on the presentation?
I just got one more,
Oh,
sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
And then the other one, in 2019, the town made a one-time transfer from the MCC reserve of $425, which is not available in 2020. I just need to be more clear on that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so we had money in a reserve, and the money was set aside to pay for the interest on short-term financing, so that's the bridge loan. So with our calculations and knowing roughly the land selling this year, we had about $425,000 that we felt that we didn't need to go towards the interest. So in the 2019 budget, we sort of offset the cost of the first year of the MCC for that. So the taxpayers would not have to take that hit.
So
And
the-
this year, it's, we were able to transfer $100,000. That's the last that's left. And then next year, there won't be any more money that's going to be transferred to the MCC.
Okay. And then one last question, this for you, Mr. Mayor. Has there been any talks in regards to the budget through the region and what the increase is looking like over there?
No, we're just getting into it in the October 17th. So, it'll be probably at least, I'm thinking 6 weeks before we're announcing an increase there, or what,
Let's see, the increases between the town and the region.
yes,
Okay.
thank you. Any other, no, okay. Not seeing any other questions. Motion put forward by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council receives the budget impact presentation presented by Treasurer T. Quinlan for information. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. And next delegation to speak will be 5.31, Kristen French Child Advocacy Center, Niagara. And the presenter, I believe, is a Janet Handy, Executive Director, and Mark Doyle, Chair President of the Fundraising Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Mark is not here tonight, but I do have a board member, Andrea Jack, here to take his place. The Kristen French, we're a regional service, and we've been open 10 years now. We started in 2008, and the region as a whole and every municipality was part of making that center happen. And so we just want to bring you up to date if you don't know who we are, and also let you know what we've been doing in the last little while. So we provide a safe place for children to disclose their abuse experiences to police and child welfare investigation teams in a child-friendly and welcoming center. We are the first fully operational child advocacy center in Ontario, and we are now one of 32 established or in development across the country. So in 10 years, the proliferation of the model has been impressive across Canada. More than half of those centers that are either established or in development are in Ontario. This is an international model of excellence in joint investigation for children and youth who have experienced child abuse, and has been endorsed as the model of choice for interviewing children by the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. We renamed the centre from the Child Advocacy Centre Niagara to the Kristen French Child Advocacy Centre Niagara, and the centre partners, staff, board, and volunteers all work tirelessly to sustain the centre in our efforts to provide this safe place. Oh, doesn't want to go.
The arrows.
Just the arrows? Okay, all right.
Doesn't want to go. All right. Perfect, thank you. Sorry about that. So as we said, our purpose is to provide a non-threatening, child-friendly place where children and youth feel safe disclosing their abuse experience. This is to minimize the number of times children have to repeat their experience to professionals. Before CACs, there may have been up to 7 times that a child would have to go through that experience again. In a joint investigation, we do one interview. That interview is recorded, and then the recording can go forward throughout the justice system on behalf of the child. And anybody who needs to see that recording or that interview can then look at the recording. We provide a coordinated partners response, and that significantly reduces the trauma associated with disclosing abuse. So investigation is really about working as a team. Our team is the police, who gather evidence and determine criminal charges if there are any to be laid. FACS Niagara, Family and Children's Services, determine child protection needs and assign special support staff to families during and after investigation. A Family Counseling Centre provides follow-up support, and partners may call in medical professionals at any time to assess children. We do raise funds specifically to have our children have mental health support immediately following and with no waiting time. So that coordination ensures that the developmental and victim needs of Niagara's children and youth are being put first in the process as they enter the justice system. Some of the larger centres across the country have been able to do return on investment research over the past number of years. And these are the benefits that have come forward out of that. Children report being less scared. Caregivers are more satisfied with the procedure and the investigation. And CACs do refer more children for both mental health services and preventative and injury-related medical exams. For professionals who are working in this field, when they work together as a team, they better understand each other's roles. They improve team results through case review, and fewer children fall through the cracks. The cost benefit is an estimated savings of 32% when a CAC coordinates investigations, as opposed to siloed investigations where children are doing those 7 times, repeating their experience. So it's more cost effective to run a CAC investigation. Since opening in 2008, more than 3,000 children and youth have found our safe place to disclose abuse. We grew from hosting 50 interviews in the first year to 340 interviews on average a year. And children come from every municipality in the Niagara region for investigation support. So in other words, there's not a municipality that does not experience child abuse impacts. Underreporting or undertreated child abuse can affect a person for a lifetime. We now know that a child who suffers abuse is 30% less likely to graduate from high school. A youth who suffers abuse is 26 times more likely to be homeless. And an adult survivor of childhood abuse is 2 times as likely to be arrested. So we consider that this early intervention and preventative model of reducing trauma and immediate mental health support will in fact have major impacts down the road for our social service system. So our strategic plan includes collaboration on a number of levels. First, there is the investigation collaboration. We also collaborate with Foster Festival, and we do outreach to youth with them. We have two groups that we do. We have Teen Creative and Kathy's Kids. And they're different age groups, but they are a creative arts group of 12 weeks where children who have been through an investigation or have been traumatized in some way and are under FACS care can come through and do artwork and be exposed to different kind of artwork from visiting artists. And this is what we find is that when they do this program and they're also doing one-on-one counseling, that if they're in the art program, the counseling moves forward much faster and in a more positive way. We do Teen Connect in the schools, which is a partner-developed video and presentation on child abuse awareness, prevention, and response, keeping oneself safe, looking at internet issues. And recently we added some of the grooming signals and signs of human trafficking. Also, part of this whole endeavor is a new, relatively new database called PCAN, Partners to End Child Abuse in Niagara. And Andrea is a major force and leader behind that, bringing together 14,
We have,
17?
yeah, 15 agencies
15
that come
agencies.
together, and it's called, you can just see it yourself, endchildabuseniagara.com. And we put all our programs on there in order to make it a one-stop hub for support.
And we've also done interagency and community learning with Niagara Chapter Native Women and the Victim Services Niagara. We've talked a little bit about the program. We recently developed a youth advisory council. That's the other piece that I want to tell you about. That provides youth age 14 to 17 years a voice in our discussions and in our marketing and in our communication to help us really understand how to reach youth, what works for them. And also they've been involved in supporting us, volunteering at events and doing other kinds of projects, including a recent YouTube video of how 14s about the center. So our funding comes from 3 different places, and I want to emphasize that we still have no core funding from the government. We've been pursuing this for 10 years, and no CACs have ongoing core funding. Some of partners in the CACs have some funding from government, like the Ministry of the Attorney General with police, but we don't have any of that guaranteed at our center. So it's a constant fundraising process. We receive funds and raise funds from 3 areas. One is events, campaigns, and planned giving. That takes up approximately 40% of our budget. Partner support, both FACS and Niagara Regional Police take up 30%. And grants, foundations, and service clubs, all the grant writing that we do takes up another 30%. We have approximately 5 events a year to meet those needs. And at the end of every presentation, no matter who we're talking to, we ask that you please stay vigilant as a community and report abuse. If you know of a child who's being abused or a child who's being hurt, we ask you to please report it. You do not have to figure out if it is abuse before you make that call. I want the professionals to do that, but please be vigilant and think about supporting that child by making that call, and you can do that directly to FACS or to police. Thank you.
So maybe stay there. I'll open it to questions. I do have a few myself. So first of all, it is against the law if you don't report child abuse. Is that correct?
It is. Yeah. There's a duty to report for all professionals, but also for the public in general. There is a duty to report as a citizen. It's a different level of duty to report, but it is there.
Thank you. And so most of your, I hate to say clients, so the people, the children that use yours, would they be mostly referred by fax? Or you have a website, and of course, most kids are pretty internet savvy. How would you, the first contact, what would be the majority? Would it be referrals, or do the children actually know enough to come to you?
No, we host the investigation, so they're always coming in through our partner team. So police or child welfare are bringing the child there to do their joint investigation and choosing that site to be the place for the child and youth to come. We go for up to 17 years now. So a lot of the majority last year, we had just about equal boys and girls. And I'd say the age range was, I believe, between 7 and 12, 13. Those reports can come in from anywhere. It could be a doctor's office, it could be a principal's office, it could be a teacher, it could be a parent, it could be a neighbor. Once that alert has come out, then the police they have a 24-hour time frame that they investigate within and bring that child in for the interview.
Excellent. And I see you're almost one a day, 340 is.
One a business day, yes. So last year we had 312 cases that involve 519 children and youth in the Niagara region.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great to know that your organization is there for them. That's for sure.
Well, my background is education. I was a principal, and, it happens regularly, and we try to let everybody know that, the slogan we use on PCAN is know more, say more, do more. If you even think, you need to call.
Yes.
You can save a child's life.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'll open up to rest of council. Any questions, comments on this? Yes, Councillor Hunt?
Maybe, Mr. Mayor, perhaps we can put if you have extra pamphlets, we can put in our lobby. Is that something we can do? Just have
I have an extra one here, too.
I did bring some materials
Yeah.
to have.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just the PCAN division, but there's also the Christian French Child Advocacy Center that I work on.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion put forward by Councillor Trophy, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be resolved that council receive the presentation by Janet Handy, Executive Director, and Kristen French Child Advocacy Center, Niagara, for information. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Next presenter is Community Beautification Advisory Committee, and the speaker is Jen. Please approach. I didn't want to butcher your last name, Jen, so I just stayed with Jen. Okay.
Just as it looks.
Okay, and thank you for this presentation tonight.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for having us here this evening. It's been a while since I've done one of these presentations, so bear with me. I will be reading a little bit just because I want to make sure I am a good representative of the committee tonight. So I'll begin with our PowerPoint presentation. The Community Beautification Committee was set up at the beginning of this year. We are a group of volunteer residents approved by council to advise the town on community beautification as defined in our terms of reference, which were approved by council, I believe this February. Our committee is a diverse group of individuals with a common interest, and we have a number of them in the audience tonight. Our common interest is to inspire residents and property owners within the town of Pelham to enhance the visual appeal of our neighborhoods and public spaces through the creative use of plants and landscaping with an overall respect for environmental stewardship. When the committee was formed earlier this year, we hit the ground running. Through grants and generous community association funding, we were presented with good opportunities to make a difference. It's something that doesn't happen every day. We continue to meet throughout the summer, and we're present at a number of community events. We'd like to thank B. Clark, who attended 2 of our committee meetings and generously donated her skills and time to help us identify our goals and priorities for 2019 through 2022. Our identified goals and priorities are, as you can see on the screen, engagement and research. So we'd like to consult with the community to develop beautification priorities, identify best practices, and develop beautification priorities based on community input and the examination of these best practices. Now, best practices, we can look at other municipalities, how they achieve certain things, and there's many ways that we can go about doing that that we're looking at right now. We'd also like to plan and advise council on priorities and annual budget requests. And this would include assessing the effectiveness of implemented recommendations. So we would determine what is to be assessed, how it will be assessed, and report back to you and the community on concluded initiatives. So we have some sort of measure of how successful our actions have been. As part of the committee's goal of community engagement, the committee members embarked on a community beautification survey. These surveys were distributed at Thursday night supper markets throughout August until the beginning of September, and at the cannabis public meeting at the MCC. Results from these surveys are available as an appendix to this presentation, which is available on the town website, and will also be actively posted through the town website on the Beautification Committee page. Those postings will happen likely on a monthly basis after our regular monthly committee meetings. Upon formation, the Beautification Committee was presented with opportunity, which I mentioned, and we are very grateful for this. The opportunity includes a Pelham Business Association grant, the Provincial Main Street Revitalization Grant, and a possibility to thank members of the community for their outstanding efforts to contribute to the beautification of Pelham. Beginning with the generosity of the Pelham Business Association, the committee is grateful and looks forward to working with them and the community to best identify how these monies can be spent. The committee was also given the time-sensitive opportunity to weigh in on how the Main Street Revitalization Grant that was awarded to the town could be spent. The sizable provincial grant must be spent by March 2020. To this point, the Community Beautification Committee would like to recommend the town undertake the following initiatives. Purchasing and installation of Christmas lights. Yeah, you can see the amounts of money that are coming from the grant and the Pelham Business Association on the screen there. But I'll skip along here. So we would like to see Christmas lights, bike racks, not lockers, but actual racks, self-watering hanging baskets, benches, tables, shade-providing permanent structures where appropriate, dog waste receptacles, and new and revitalized town signs. That's a pretty long list, and I know some things have been priced and some things have not been, but these are what we would like to recommend, and we leave it to you to take these recommendations and do with them what you can. So we would also like tonight to request a budget for the printing of thank you cards that we would like to send out to those people in the community, residents who go above and beyond. One example would be Willowbrook Nurseries, who donated materials, time, effort, labor to beautify downtown Fenwick. We would like to thank them, and we would ask that we either be given a small budget, and we've come up with this budget. Oh, it's actually as an appendix to this presentation, which is also available online. We've come up with a sample budget of $175, but you know, there is a possibility that this could be funded through the town's stationary operating budget. But of of course, we leave that with council to decide what you would like to do. So the Beautification Committee would like to thank council for the opportunity to present tonight, and we look forward to working with you in the coming years to beautify Pelham. Are there any questions?
Okay. So thank you for your presentation and your hard work that the committee's doing. You know, there's a lot of stuff there to do that take the polling the citizens and getting that all together. Thank you for doing that. So I take it that's giving you some direction on what's going on. So that's excellent. Any questions then? Yes, Councilor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Jen. Christmas lights, you mean like the lights that are up on the lampposts?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So
I would support that.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
I think we have some like snowflakes and stars and stuff like that now, and they're LED, I believe. So they're maybe a little bit more environmentally friendly than what we've had in the past. So that is what we are recommending.
And then the other thing is benches. So I had somebody, a constituent earlier this year, and I'm just wondering if perhaps, and you know where I'm going with this, Vicki. So it was somebody who wanted to put some money in and have a bench dedicated. And I'm just wondering if that's something that we can spend a little bit more time and effort in going that direction, because there's a lot of people, a lot of retirees. It's lovely to have benches in areas that are heavily, you know, walked in and used, whether it's on the walking paths or just, you know, in this particular case, it was somebody who just wanted it on their court, I think, that they lived in. Hopefully that came to fruition, but perhaps you guys can work together to kind of maybe even just do a little advertising, because they didn't know something like this existed, where people, if they wanted to buy a bench and dedicate it, little plaque on the back,
Yes.
that's something somebody could put some money towards, and that's, you know, a bench that they could contribute to the community. So I think that would be a good initiative, and there's a lot of building going on, as we know, so perhaps that's something we can work on.
We're already, we've been discussing it actually at our meetings, so we'd like to see something like that become a bigger.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And you're aware then that Vicki has been doing this? Have you guys made that connection?
I'm not sure if that Dave Nichols, who does sit in on our meetings, and he's wonderful, he might have mentioned that, but I may not have picked up on that, so I'll reach out to you after
Just
tonight.
making
Thank
that
you.
connection. Okay, great. And also too, they revitalized town signs, so they, like the Welcome to Pelham signs?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
So
maybe.
isn't it, the one that's on South Pelham, isn't that fairly new, going from Welland into, on South Pelham, not far from Circle K? Is that?
Oh, that's right. It's a little bit faded. We've also been looking at maybe the plantings that go around. I know when you drive
okay.
in, it says "Welcome to Pelham" coming from East Font Hill. You know, there's some nice like ragweed and
Okay, so jazzing up the
goldenrod.
gardens and,
Just maybe make it look a little bit more visually appealing.
And because we have so many nurseries in town, can we work with them to, I mean, they often want to contribute, like we've seen with Willowbrook, to help give us kind of that little bit of an edge to get some new plantings and that kind of thing in as well. I mean, they've done a great job already in Fenwick, but.
Well, we're seeing, we live in a wonderful community. People are very engaged, and we're very lucky.
With all the flowers.
For
and-
that.
Yeah.
So we're seeing, since I've become a member of this committee, we've seen a lot of associations and groups reach out. I mean, the Pelham Business Association, they came to our second meeting before we had really even gotten our feet, and said they had thousands of dollars raised for us. So
Great.
it's been quite a journey, but it would be wonderful if more people would come forward to help with these initiatives.
For sure. And I don't know if like the Pelham Voice would help with that effort, maybe doing some advertising, that kind of thing as well, to let people know that whether it's benches or what have you, that's something you can do. Yeah, it's worth the ask.
Yes,
Just throwing it out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Wing first.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, and this is more to staff with respect to the revitalization initiative grant. When we applied for that grant, was it specific to what we would be doing with the monies? Or was it just general, here's $52,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it was not specific. It was a grant actually allocated to us. It was a one-time grant that we received.
So we can spend.
Yeah,
the way
there's
we
actually,
want.
there is a list of eligible items which are we do have a list of what things do qualify. So I think the beautification committee has that list
Yeah.
of what's eligible.
The one thing we may be mindful of is the Pelham Active Transportation Committee, I think is liking the bike lockers, so we need to coordinate with two committees and make sure everyone's on the same page.
Good point. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I like the idea that you're looking at town signs, but right now, I think we have to do more with our town signs than we've done. They look very commercial right now, big metal structures with just Pelham on there. I mean, you look at some of the other regions, they have some very fancy signs. You know, you look at Windsor, they got the automotive capital of Canada. You know, all these towns have these big, nice names. You know, we have a lot of potential because we are at the highest elevation. We have the Fond Hill Cane. We have some of the most beautiful views in the region. And I think we need to put that somehow on a sign and make it a little larger for people to come and see. Thank you. And for your work, especially in Fenwick and the things you've done, I think that's awesome. Appreciate it.
I think Willowbrook has done a lot in Fenwick. We haven't done too much to date yet, but we're hoping that we get there.
Right.
And,
Thank you.
so, and yes, we did, when we made the recommendations, I just wanted to say we did have the criteria for that grant, so we do know what we've recommended does fit within that grant criteria. And we welcome the opportunity to work with active transportation.
Great.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, no, Mr. Mayor, I was wondering, is there still an active horticultural society in Pelham?
Is there? I don't know. I'd have to ask someone.
We have a garden club. We
there's
do
a
have a
garden
Pelham
club.
Garden Club.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And,
yeah.
and they're working in conjunction with you on the plantings?
I would say yes. We have a few members here tonight from the garden club, so.
And that is one of the wishes of council, is that by, we're hoping that the area landscapers, when they have seen the steps that Willowbrook has definitely taken, where it's a wish of this town and town staff that other landscapers will step up and perhaps take their own flower beds, whether it be one, they don't have to do the whole area, even if they just take one and do one, it'd be great, because we do have a lot of landscapers in the town, and hopefully they'll follow Willowbrook's lead, which was absolutely tremendous down in Fenwick, and jump in and join in the job for sure. And perhaps you could be the catalyst. They could go to you, and of course you could steer them in the right way. Exactly.
I'm sure the committee would be good with that. Yeah, we would welcome that. If anyone is interested in that, to reach out. Thanks to Mark McDonald, who I haven't actually met in person, he set up a beautification@pelham.ca email address, so people can reach us that way and get a response right away.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor Hahn?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so actually to your point, so when Willowbrook did their gardens, is there a little plaque or something saying that this was sponsored, or?
It's actually in the works.
Okay, because that could be a whole program. It's like you adopt a road,
Yes.
you adopt a section of road, and then you get a bunch of people together and you pick up garbage however often you do it.
Yep.
Same thing, right?
Yep.
But having that plaque is a little bit more incentive for people to do it, because it's also advertising.
Yep. Good point. Yes. Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, one more idea. In 2021, we have the Canada Games coming, and the bike races coming to our community. That's going to be a huge event, and I think that's an opportunity for us to show Pelham as it really is to the nation and to the world, because there's 5,000 athletes coming to that event. So it's going to be huge.
As an athlete who participated in the Canada Games in cycling back in Brandon, Manitoba, I can tell you it was quite an experience for me as an athlete to stay at Athletes Village and participate with my teammates. Many of us went on to do some pretty amazing things. My girlfriend won the gold at the Athens Olympics, and but it is an opportunity to showcase Pelham and this is probably less of our committee and more me, but I believe it's an opportunity to showcase Pelham to not Canada and even abroad.
Thank you.
Councilor Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. First, thank you, Jen, and the rest of the committee for your presentation this evening. Very well. And the one biggest thing that they had in the presentation was the engagement in the research, right? They set up at the supper market. So it got feedback from all of the residents, or a lot of the residents. So not, because landscaping is like decorating. You might like beige, I might like black or gray, and they're getting feedback from everybody, so which is very important. So for that's good. And I also want not only the committee, but staff. Christine, I don't even know her last name, but Christine, she's been phenomenal, printing up these surveys at a last minute getting them all ready. So a great job with her as well, and scheduling everything for us.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, any other comments or questions for the presenter? Thank you, Jen, for that, and we look forward to more solid work from your committee. Thank you. Motion put forward by Councilor Trophy, seconded by Councilor Hahn. Be resolved that council receive the presentation by the Community Beautification Advisory Committee for information. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Where we are, and report of regional councilor is not going to happen tonight. Diana isn't with us. Adoption of minutes. Motion put forward by Councilor Wink, seconded by Councilor Hahn. Be resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Number 1, C-15 2019. Regular council minutes of September 16th, 2019. 2, SC-32-2019. Special council minutes for September 16th, 2019. And Special Council -33, 2019. Special council minutes for September 23rd, 2019. Any comments on these minutes? Other questions or omissions noted? Not seen any. I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Business arising from council minutes. Is there any, Madam Clerk?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So then we move to number 8, request to lift consent agenda items for separate consideration. And actually number 9, consent agenda items to be considered in block. Is there any item that Councilor sees that would like to lift? Yes, Councilor.
Yeah, 9.7.1.
Okay. Thank you. Any other? Although if I can get the Director of Public Works on 9.3.1. Mr. Marr, if you could update date change on the open house event for the new water tower in Pelham. I see there's a date change.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the region has postponed the meeting that was going to be held on October 16th for the environmental class assessment study that they're undertaking for the location of the new water tower for Pelham. And that meeting has been rescheduled to November 6th from 6 till 8 at Fire Station 1.
Thank you very much, sir. And so that's in the format of an open house, general information to the general public, ask questions and what have you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So it'll be an open house. They'll have regional representatives on hand to answer any questions that the public may have with respect to the options that are being considered for the location of the water tower.
Great. Thank you for that. Going through the budget at the region, I see they put 1.2 million into the preparation and planning of this tower, and I believe the tower is due, correct me if I'm wrong, 2022 at a cost of 7.9 million.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm not 100% up to speed on all the details with respect to timing and cost for the project, but
Okay.
we'll, if anybody from the public wants to get more information, I urge them to attend this meeting on November 6th, and it's a great opportunity to see what's being considered, and then speak to the regional representatives, and also there'll be an opportunity to provide comments and feedback with respect to the alternatives being considered.
Okay. Thank you for that. Back to the, so you pulled, I'm sorry, Counselor, 9.71. Any other item that any councilor wants to pull? Okay, so,
So you just read this part, but save and accept 9.7.
okay. So a motion put forward by Councilor Wink, seconded by Councilor Hildebrand. Be resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the September 7th, 2019 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable except for 9.7.1. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. And now, Councillor, if you can discuss that item.
Yeah, just in the town of Pelham Public Library board meeting minutes, 6.2, results of patron surveys, change in operating hours. I'm not sure if Councillor Stewart would have the results of that survey, or?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't. But Amy, our interim CEO of the library, is here. She might be able to speak to that.
I can certainly provide you with that. I don't have it with me, but I can send it out to council if you want.
Yeah, I'd just be interested in the survey from the residents in regards to the change of hours. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's all I wanted.
Yep, and perhaps if you could make sure you email that to all council. Great. Okay, yep, thank you very much.
So now you need to do a motion to receive the minutes.
Okay,
It's the same mover and seconder, is
Okay.
to receive those minutes.
So again, second, or motion put forward by Councilor Wink, seconded by Councilor Hildebrand, and to a motion put forward to approve 9.71.
Just to receive for
Oh,
information.
to receive for information. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Oh, sorry, let's turn the page.
So the next thing is the addition to the agenda, which is the report. Members of council, you have the addition of the agenda from Councillor Cholfie. Councillor Cholfie.
Yeah, okay. So we got on 11.1, reports from members of council, and we have a verbal report from Councillor Trophy.
Okay, so I'm here today on behalf of myself and the Cannabis Control Committee. There's been a couple of things that come up recently. Two issues have come to our attention. The first one is the Cannabis Control Committee requires in-depth legal advice to allow it to make determinations and specific recommendations to council. So I'm here asking council for $10,000, not to exceed $10,000 for legal, to be able to pay for legal advice. These questions are that we need answered will help us move forward.
In pertaining to the formation of bylaws and what have you then?
Correct, correct.
Thank you.
So we're at our limit. I understand that we're at our limit right now, so that's why I wanted to bring it to the council.
Excellent, thank you. So I can open this to discussion.
You need a seconder?
So I need a seconder, and Councilor Hahn will second. So to any discussion on this motion? Yes, Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Cholfie, is this a request for 2020 budget?
No, this request is right for now, 2019. Right now, our legal, my understanding is that our legal fees budget for 2019 is at its limit. So that's why I wanted to come back and get some approval. Hoping not to exceed the $10,000, but there's about 13, 14 questions that we have that we want to have answered prior to moving forward. And not necessarily the lawyer physically in present. It could be done through email. We send him the questions and he'd give us the answers back, so to keep the cost down.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is there any way we can have a staff report within a couple of weeks or something on this issue to see whether there's any alternatives? I'm not against providing legal opinion for you and necessary funding for you, but is there any alternative other than just spending $10,000 for us to get legal advice?
Well, there is a budget for town legal fees.
Correct.
And we're at the limit right now.
I understand.
So that's why I'm coming to you. So I don't know if there's going to be any alternatives.
And then if I could, go ahead, I see the CEO is chomping at the bit here.
Actually, I'm not. I assume at some point I'll have something to add to that, but Ms. Quinlan, I think, has something to add to the discussion, which may assist council.
Director of Finance?
For you, Mr. Mayor, if you're looking for an additional $10,000, we are above our supplemental revenue projection, so we do have some money there that can cover the $10,000 if you need it, and it won't have a negative impact in this year's budget. So I just wanted to share that with council.
Thank you. And the one thing I would think is that we are under the gun time-wise. July 15th at this stage of the game is in the distance, but at the same time, it is getting closer by the day, if not by the hour. So myself, I would fully support this request by the Control Committee and without a staff report, just to make sure that the committee can continue going ahead without any further delays. That's my own thought.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we also had that meeting a few weeks back at the MCC, and we heard loud and clear from the number of residents there saying that they would support us 100% if we needed more legal fees or legal costs. We heard them loud and clear, so.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
And I'm hoping not to get near the $10,000. It just.
Yes,
Okay.
that is your ceiling, yes.
Putting a limit on it.
Yep, thank you. Any other discussion on this? No?
That being said, can I put a motion on the floor then?
Yeah.
Read it up.
Madam Clerk, what's the next, so we vote on this motion?
Yeah, so I have a motion by Councillors Chofie and Han.
Okay, so we do have this motion put forward.
I think he wants to read
Oh,
something into the budget.
I'm sorry. Go
Well, I
ahead.
got the motion, so be it resolved that council for the town of Pelham hereby authorizes an expenditure not to exceed $10,000 for the purpose of obtaining legal advice from Aird and Bearless LLP to support the work of the Cannabis Control Committee.
Okay, and seconded by Councilor Hahn. Okay. Any other discussion, Councilor Hildebrand?
Ask some question?
Sure.
You selected that legal firm for which reason?
Just to keep everything consistent with the cannabis.
Are they experts in that area?
From my understanding, yes.
Okay.
May I have a comment from the CAO on that situation?
Would the CEO care to comment on that?
Sure. A general and a specific. In general, I certainly tell you that my own managerial philosophy is very strongly that every advisory committee should have some sort of budget. It may be extremely modest, but that it's generally speaking not ideal for any municipality to ask its citizens to volunteer their time, to put forward effort over the course of years on whatever the topic happens to be, and then to have absolutely no resources. So earlier this evening, we had a different committee asking for $175, and that's frankly too small a number for this. We shouldn't be dealing with $175 matters. That one, I have enough budget in my office that'll get taken care of. But the point is they have to come to ask for extremely modest amounts. So as a general, I think always advisory committee should have 500, 1,000, but it can vary. And the Cannabis Control Committee, in retrospect, should have been given a budget. It was not. So this is sort of retroactively kind of fixing that. That said, it's uncharted territory, and I don't know how anyone would know that. So hindsight's 20/20, of course. With that said, Aird & Bearless is the firm that the Corporation of the Town of Pelham has retained to defend the court application brought by Leviathan, well, specifically by Woodstock Biomed, but ultimately by Leviathan. And so there's some benefit here in receiving advice that is intellectually consistent and mutually supportive, because the town has to deal with multiple third parties in the guise of this topic generally. Accordingly, in this instance, that's certainly most appropriate. So there's consistency of advice and consistency of approach. So although I have no comment to make on the actual motion, that of course is for council alone to decide, this makes sense as far as it goes. Whether the undertaking is a good idea, only you can decide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor? Good. You're good? Any other comments? No. Okay, so on this motion then, all those in favor? All those opposed?
Well, apparently it's a great idea.
Yeah. Motion carries.
So the part two of my report, it has come to the attention of the Cannabis Control Committee on Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019 meeting that an application has been submitted to the Niagara Escarpment Commission to construct a one-story, 11,520 square foot greenhouse for the production of cannabis on Kilman Road in North Pelham. So I've got a motion put together, whereas council for the town of Pelham, elected government, has enacted an interim control bylaw to allow for a review of land use, planning policies, and regulations pertaining to cannabis related land uses in the rural areas of the town as a reflection of the will of the people. And whereas it is recognized that lands under development permit control of the Niagara Escarpment Commission are not regulated by the town zoning bylaw. Be it resolved that council for the town of Pelham hereby calls upon the Niagara Escarpment Commission to respect the existence of the interim control bylaw presently in effect in the town of Pelham for the duration of the interim control bylaw, and that a copy of this resolution be provided to the Niagara Escarpment Commission forthwith. So the interim control bylaw is only in place for another 8.5 months, and where I'm asking is for the Niagara Escarpment Commission to respect that interim control bylaw. So I'd like to put this motion forward, and I have a seconder, Councillor Hahn.
Okay. Questions on that? I have a few, but I'll open it up to council first. Okay. So I would like to have the CAO, with your legal advice. NEC, of course, is a entity unto itself, operating inside the town in this particular case. Do you foresee any problems, difficulties of council passing this motion?
Motions done properly are pure expressions of your political will. This council was recently elected on a strong mandate, amongst other things, to specifically address the communal approach to cannabis and the regulation thereof. In this instance, this is a motion that isn't seeking any particular action that will have any particular impact upon any particular property rights. The NEC is, you'll have to forgive me, it's headquartered somewhere well north and west of here, 2 or 3. Okay, there you are. Not in the peninsula. It is charged with land use planning up and down all the way up to Tobermory, right? The entire length of the geographic feature. And it has no particular focus or expert knowledge of local conditions. And it spans dozens and dozens of municipalities over the course of its length. Accordingly, if it is the will of this council to specifically ask the NEC or to draw the NEC's attention to the fact that the interim control bylaw is relatively new. I'll add to that, it's only this calendar year that this community decided to start applying site plan control to greenhouses.
Correct.
Which is also, historically would have made us an anomaly. And now we're sort of into the main fold. So to draw the NEC's attention to a number of significant planning changes that have occurred within the boundaries of this small municipality. There's but one of dozens that the NEC is supposed to look at and think about. There may well be a very good point, and it isn't to curtail anyone's individual property rights, but you have taken a significant step to provide yourselves with breathing times, to in turn provide the Cannabis Control Committee with the opportunity to give you advice so that you can make whatever decisions you're going to make roughly 8 months from now. Because it's not aimed at specific or identifiable property rights per se, and rather just asking another semi-democratic institution to respect the wishes of this fully democratic institution, I think you're entirely justified in so doing if you wish to.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any other questions on this motion? Then I will.
I just want a quick comment on that. If the Niagara Escarpment Commission does hereby respect the existence of our interim control bylaw, we're only talking another 8 months. The people have spoken loud and clear here in Pelham. We've all seen it. The Kersey room was full. The Kinsman room was used, and they're spilling out into the hallways. So this will be over another 8 months or less, and we can put in our bylaws in place, and they're going to be based on facts, odor control, how we're going to get it, or how we mitigate it, everything else. So I would hope that they would respect this.
Okay, Councilor? Without seeing any other people, councilors wanting to debate, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion? And all those against? Motion passes. Thank you, Councilor. Motion put forward by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive report number 2019-0099, Corporate Services, and Council approve the list of capital projects for the grant submission of the ICIP, Community, Culture, and Recreation Stream. Any questions on this item? Oh, and Minister, Director of Finance?
May I do a presentation?
She has a presentation on the,
Yeah.
Yep, okay, yep, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just think that it's important that we go through the items. So there's a new grant request that came out. It's called Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community, Culture, and Recreation Stream. This is very exciting for us in the community to be able to apply for this grant. We just want to make sure that the projects that we're bringing forward are the projects that council is supportive, and that's why we're coming to you today. The applications are due on November the 12th, so we have a little bit of time, but not a lot. It's a wonderful opportunity because it's the town's portion of these projects is 26.67%. Then the other two, the federal government will pay 40%, and the province is at 33.33%. So we went through our capital asset management plan and looked at all of the projects that we have in the next 9 years, because this actually runs till 2028, and we said, you know, which ones could be eligible for this grant, and we listed them, and then we looked at other things that we should be doing, and we've got a list here, and we're bringing forward a couple of new ideas that were submitted subsequent to this report. That's why I wanted to do the presentation. So it's a great opportunity for the town. So the objectives of this grant is it supports the projects that improve access or quality of community, culture, and recreation priority infrastructure projects, and it is given to projects that are community-oriented and not commercial and open to the public. And the projects must be completed by 27, 28, probably March 31st, 2028. So it gives us a good window. And the projects must include a capital component, and the eligible assets include a recreation facilities, arena, multipurpose recreation centers, playing fields. I highlight that because we've got quite a few of those. Cultural facilities, theater, libraries, and we'll talk about the library, museums, performing arts center, and cultural centers, and community centers is also another one that qualifies for this grant. So there's two categories. One is the multi-purpose category, and these are individual projects that are capped up to $50 million of funding, so it's pretty significant. And there's rehabilitation and renovation, and these are projects that are capped up to $5 million of renovations and other things that we're looking at for renovations. So this is our list here. Construction of 2 splash pads. I know that in quite a few of the budget open houses, we've heard people say, you know, we need some splash pads in Pelham, and we're looking at Centennial Park and also at the where the pool is. They're about $350,000 each. The next category is pool improvements and park upgrades to the sports field. So this is where, you know, we went through till 2028 to say what are all of the needs that we have. Included in there in 2028 is $1.5 million for the swimming pool. So we need to get the pool redone. So that's in there. Expand the parking at the MCC, including the addition of more designated spots. So that's $500,000. Purchase of the gym floor covering, $35,000. That's small. Installation of the auxiliary generator of the MCC. I have to confirm this number with the Utility Sustainability Committee tomorrow. I put in $400,000 for that. We don't have a generator. Installation of a sign for the MCC, about $200,000. Fencing around the MCC. This is in the front part. We actually have it in the 2020 budget, but we put it in here because we think it could qualify. And then construction of public restrooms, event facility, town hall at Peace Park. So this was a concept that was brought forward a few years ago, and Vicki can talk about it, where we would have on the outside of this building permanent washrooms and other areas for the events, and that's about $650,000. So we actually have an architect's rendering for that. Like that one's, like, I would say shovel ready for that one. Are there any questions for recreation improvements? Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the presentation that was made about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the band Shell.
Yes.
They came forward and asked for everything from electrical to, I guess they don't want to do tiering now, but just landscaping and such. Is that in here when you say Peace Park? Is that considered in here?
No, it's not, because this presentation was done before that. So
okay.
we can. This is why I'm here tonight to say, you know, is there anything else? So I would put that on there.
Yeah.
To put. Go ahead, Vicki.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say that project will be done now. I'm not sure if it'll qualify for the grant.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Do you understand? We'll be doing it
Before.
like, hopefully before November.
So this money wouldn't technically be coming until what period of
Well,
time?
until in the 2020, because the applications are due November 12th, and then they have to approve them. So you're right, Vicki. That's
So it
right.
wouldn't be early 2020. It'd be like mid to late 2020.
Well, they were actually pretty quick with the Pelham Street one that we got. So we applied for that one on May the 9th, and I think we heard back by September.
Yeah.
So 4 months, which for grant approvals is very quick.
So I'm just saying, because in theory, if we were to apply in November and you add 4 months in, it could be done before spring if we were to do
but
that.
right now, I think that Peace Park has to be done now in order for us to be ready for next year. Like the sod and all that has to be done now. Yeah. Okay, and the next one is live.
Wait,
Sure.
Councilman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, purchase of gym floor covering at MCC, $35,000, I get that, but we also at one point discussed covering for the ice surface. So in case we wanted to have a concert in the winter in the Accipiter Arena, we would have a covering there for it. So it might be something that you want to include. If we're asking for the moon, might as well throw that in there too.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as well as when you talk about the expanding parking at MCC, and of course, that's up for debate where that's gonna happen and how that's gonna happen, but, we talked about the possibility of perhaps altering the boulevard that's right across from Wellspring, and whether that means, and I know we're just still waiting on a report to find out how
Right, and
feasible
that's
that
in my
is.
presentation.
That's going to be in there?
Yeah.
Okay, because we may have to do a whole lot of landscaping changes in order to accommodate more stalls there, in addition to a parking lot someplace else, so that they're both in there? Okay.
Okay. The next one is library improvements. We put that as a separate category. So right now, when the presentation was submitted, we just included what the library has submitted in the capital plan, what they have in the next 9 years of a capital plan. And then we also included about $300,000 if they're to renovate the upper level of the existing library. But then since then, we've been talking to the library and we've been talking with the staff as well and saying, you know, does it make sense now, because this grant won't come around for a long time, these recreational grants. You know, does it make sense that we move the library to the MCC? You know, because that was part of the original plan for the community center, was to do that. So, so this is going to be part of the discussion that we have to have here. So right now, this is showing what we have today, which is to renovate the lower level and put the elevator in. And then, and now since then, we're thinking big, because there's lots of money here that we want to tap into, you know, and the building is 30 years old, the library building, which we can sell and help, and then whatever we could sell, we can help offset the 27%, that's the town's portion. So, so as I mentioned, these projects listed above were all in the 10-year capital plan. So these two other ones, so the new projects that are proposed, so the main urban square, the Werniff, as it's called, the report is coming to council on October the 21st, and the director of planning will be doing that presentation. And it's describing, it'll describe the vision of that area, and the total of that is $3.5 million. So she's gonna talk about that. That's the visual of what that would look like outside of the community center with different activities there. So that's what that is. But the director of public works will talk about it. The reason why I put it here is that it qualifies for the grant. So I don't want us, you know, to miss an opportunity for something that's in our East Fawn Hill secondary plan, and that's what this is. That, and it actually qualifies for a recreational space. So that's one. And then the other one is the Fawn Hill Library expansion. The staff is proposing moving the Fawn Hill Library to the MCC since this is part of the original proposal. It would maximize the MCC space for programming. We can share programming spaces, for example, share, you know, washrooms and different things. And a lot of the community centers have libraries co-located. So it's a natural hub to have a library and have a community center together. The issue is the space and where do we put it. So when we were talking, one of the things we were looking at is, I don't have a clicker, but the top part is Meridian Way, and then the side is Wellspring. So this is right in front of the gym. And that's about 4,000 square feet. 2 levels is 8,000 square feet. Talking to the library, and Amy is here, and I'll have her talk. She had a special meeting with her library board, and I'll let her describe what she thinks their needs are. So, Amy, if you want to come over. Okay.
Okay, so right now in the library on 43 Pelham Square, we use about a little over 10,000, about 10,500 square feet, about 9,000 on the main floor and about 1,500 in the basement. With the renovation we had been talking about, we'd add another probably 1,500 square feet down there for staffing. If we moved out of the location we were at, what I did was I took all the components that we currently have in the library and plugged them into the Southern Ontario Library Service work form that shows how much space you should have for existing components. Right now, we are on 10,500, we're way less than we should have for what we actually have. So what you do when you do that, with components is you count how many chairs you have, you count how many staff you have, you count each service that you have, and it tells you exactly, you put it in, and it tells you exactly how much space you should have for each thing. When we calculated that for our current stuff that we have, which is actually less than what we need, it gave us 14,700 square feet as what we should be having for what we're using. So what it tells us is, one, a lot of places we're not accessible, and second, a lot of places it's just not strategically, you're not sitting people in the right space. So you're sitting them too close together for them to want to stay in a library, that type of thing. So the board decided that for the minimum, because we just want to make sure we carry on the services we actually have at the proper space, that the minimum we need is 14,700 square feet to move, to carry on the exact same services we're having, because we don't have that space. If we merged with the MCC, it would help with some of the major programming space, but it still wouldn't carry the space for our collection or our staffing or anything like that. So we'd still need quite a bit of space. 8,000 would not be anywhere near enough, even though we would love to be part of the MCC. We asked years ago if we could. We'd be happy to have that sharing space. But I think 8,000 means that we'd be actually scrunched even more than we are now. So we'd actually have to lessen our services.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when you talk 8,000 square feet, are you talking about on one level or tiered?
I think they were talking tiered probably.
Two levels.
Because 4,000 and 4,000. Yeah, tiered.
Yes, Councilor Hilder.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Amy, have you considered using the meeting rooms and all the other things that are available during the daytime at the MCC?
Yes.
And the lobbies and all that?
Yeah, like right now, where we have the amount of space we have for our collection itself is a couple of thousand square feet less than what we're really supposed to have for the space of the collection we have, just for that alone. So we've been squishing everything together way more than we should have all along. If we're moving to a new facility, to do that again defeats the purpose of moving.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just guessing here, but you'll be able to qualify this or not. So I'm guessing during the daytime when kids are in school, the library, people in the library, the population goes down. When kids get out of school, probably significant goes up, because I think a lot of people do use the library as a, dare I say, holding facility to pick safe. Your kids are safe.
Our business hours are actually during the day. It's actually just a difference of people that come in. We have mostly, seniors, retirees during the day, a lot of adults, and then even some group home kids and things like that. And then after school, it kind of switches.
So then it goes to younger kids. So I'm just, again, thinking out loud here. So if you were to move the library to the MCC, the kids now have the option of going to the library, reading a book, or going into the gym and playing basketball, or whatever it is they want to do. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the same number of kids sitting and taking up tables and study carrels at the library, because now they have more options to do other activities, right?
Yes.
You've taken that into consideration?
The other consideration is that we've been so small for so long that we actually haven't, when I did the component approach, it's actually the more moderate approach, it's the more conservative approach. If you look at the standards approach, we are way smaller than what we should be for our population already, just as a library. When these communities, when they join the community center with a library, they share joint parts, but they're not reducing the amount of space people are going to use to study or to sit and read and things like that, because it's a different atmosphere. So what we want to do is expand the use of this facility for people to study and things like that, because right now it's been too noisy. People don't stay.
Well, we've also got the MCC, and I'm sure you've given it a better name than what I'm going to call it, but an area for seniors to socialize, read, do whatever they want to do in the area just off the Accuracy room, right? So you could use that area for the same purpose, basically, if you're talking about seniors want a place to socialize or to read or what have you. There's that area.
Yeah.
There you go. There is that area. So that would take out some of the requirement that you would have then for that purpose, because we've got an area
That
for
would actually be what I'm trying to say is, at 14.7, we're going the minimum of what we're doing right now, which is actually less than what they recommend for a community to be doing. So by actually joining with MCC and doing 14.7, we're still doing the minimum of less than a minimum what they ask the community to do for a library. So what we'd be doing is, sure, we'd be sharing that space, that would expand it, and so then we could stay at the minimum. But really, we should be having about $20,000 square foot library right now for this size community. So we're not asking for that, we're just asking to stay at the minimum, and then we can expand into the MCC so that we can stay at that for a little bit longer. And to put it in 8,000, the other problem is, if the community continues growing, you have to think about 10 years from now, we're gonna have to expand the library again. Where are you gonna go if you've already squished it into a spot that you can't expand?
Councilor Hill, is that?
Have you taken into account the new library services there are? I'm not saying necessarily libraries, all the e-books and.
Yes,
I
but-
just got invited to a
Absolutely.
site, Read Me, and they send me books to myself personally, so
Yeah.
I don't even have to go to the library.
Libraries are changing for that. We're still finding that reading books and coming into the library is more popular than ebooks and things like that, but it keeps expanding. So every couple of years, you see the trend, we're getting more use, not less use of everything. But it's still such a tiny percentage of the actual use of the library. And the library is a space as a community hub for hanging out and for being creative and for meeting people and things like that. And that would also expand into the MCC, but that's why I'm saying, at least if we had the minimum, expanding to the MCC would work. But if we don't have the minimum, then we're just going backwards.
So I'll ask a question.
Sure.
Way to hear at this council, of course, this is kind of like a Christmas wish list anyway. So what would it be if the library board had their Christmas wish list, sorry, and so what would you like to see happen?
Okay, so if I had my absolute, like what I think would be above and beyond would be the third row there. Actually, either the fourth row or the third row. The fourth row would be perfect because the one that says 17,797 for square feet, that would be an addition to the MCC, and then we wouldn't have to expand for many, many years. It would expand for the growth. It would give us the ability to expand what we're offering from the library. And then the last one is the same amount of space for the library, but it's a standalone. So you can see there's about 3,000 square feet we're saying we would save by being as part of MCC as our big idea picture. But we're not asking for the 20,000 right now. What we're asking for is the 14,700 plus room to expand. If you put us back into a space that we can't expand, we're going to be in the same problem in 10 years. Libraries are not actually getting smaller. Most of them are getting bigger. And it's because people want a space to be in the library and to share creatively, to hang out and socialize. One of the things in the community they find is that the library is one of the few places that people actually will go whether they know anyone or not, and they might get their only contact with someone else by going into the library. They feel that's a safe place to go. Loneliness is a huge factor. They say that actually people that are lonely when they get older, it's as bad as being alcoholic. So you could actually, you can reduce your lifespan by being from that loneliness for your health. So it's actually, the library is a huge benefit for that, for people to go into. Plus, if we show how important the library is to us as a community, we're showing to kids that literacy is important and that this is what we take as important in the community.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I see a changing landscape with regards to electronics and library use, et cetera. When I lived out west, the concept that we're discussing right now was used in a lot of areas out west, where it was kind of a one-stop shop. You've got your library, your town hall, your arena, everything kind of one-stop shop. I just think that there's probably opportunity, whether it's in that 400 or 4,000 square feet or surrounding area around the MCC. Have we looked at anything else around the MCC that could possibly be used? I still think it's a missed opportunity if we don't start focusing things kind of in an area where you can drop the kids off and they can go skate, they can go to read a book or what have you. It's a choice. And to your point, when people are lonely and want to socialize, yes, they can go to the library, but if the library in and of itself is at a community center, it's a community center. So now they have other rooms and other activities to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they have to use just the library. They have the seniors, whatever you called it, Vicki. They have the active living area, and they have the walking. It's very, very popular, the walking track. So yeah, I think that you'll see a shift and a focus of people doing different activities and not just what they were doing when the library is at its existing facility.
I do think that it would be I think it would be a great opportunity to be part of MCC or near MCC and be part of that community. I just don't know if that can happen, especially with 8,000 square feet. That's not enough.
Okay. Any other questions for Amy, I don't know your last name, I'm sorry.
Gilman.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay, Amy,
you.
thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So this is what, as Amy said, is the recommendation that came from the library board. And they're saying that the addition should be 14,700 as a minimum, with another 3,500 for undeveloped space. And it must have 50 parking spots. Right now it has 20, or it's a standalone facility. So the only issue with a standalone facility is that we don't have excess land just to dedicate to the library. We would have to. So that's the issue. So so we came from it from two different angles. The staff, we thought it'd be a great opportunity to, put it as the library, and we thought, it was like 9,500. But the board is saying something else. The needs are different. So.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So what I'm seeing, so 50 vehicles just for the library. How many parking spots are there now currently? 20. And then they're asking for a separate elevator just for the library if it was at the MCC? There's already 2 in there. Wow.
Yes.
The reason they asked for a separate elevator was only if it's, well, obviously it's only multiple floors, but if you're in the library and you're getting books in one spot, then you go to another spot to leave, it's very, it's just not good service. But also, the fact that staff are carrying books up and down on carts, if you're having, like, say, a hockey tournament, and staff are having to go through and weaving in and out of hockey bags just with their book carts, it looks very strange to the public, and it's inconvenient and not good service.
Well, I believe there's a service elevator there, correct? Yeah, there is a service elevator just for staff,
Oh, okay, well,
other than the public elevator.
yeah, but it's so is it behind the scenes, like we go from the library?
Well, I don't know where the library would be built, but right now they're carrying supplies from one end of the arena to another through carts and through the elevators that are there currently.
Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So because we're building our wish list, I wouldn't want to miss out on the opportunity to proceed with asking for something such as this for a grant. And yes, it can be tweaked. There's opportunity. We just learned we have a service elevator. I mean, there's lots of things that we haven't. This is really been a wham bam thank you ma'am coming together, right?
Yeah.
So this is very spontaneous, and I think we need to have a little bit more thought put into this. Which means that, you meet with an architect and see what can be done, what's feasible, what lands we have available. There may be an opportunity, kind of speak around something here, but there could be an opportunity, hypothetically speaking, that there might be another piece of land that could be used for this that would be nearby. We really don't know at this point, but to not make the ask would be a huge miss. So
the only thing is, in making the ask, we have to have specifics. We just can't say we're moving the Fawn Hill Library to the community center, and they're going to know, well, how many square feet. We have to have those details, and then once we put those details on, we have to deliver on it. So that's the whole thing. So I have engaged with the architects that built the MCC, Petrov. Just looking at different options. One of the things that, Vicki, we first started looking at it was, can you put the second floor in the mezzanine? You know how there's but there's not enough square footage for that in order for us to do that. But we haven't looked at all the options. I mean, this is just us bouncing things in the air, and I gave Amy a call, and I said, and she called the emergency meeting to the library board to say, here's an opportunity for us. And this is where it's exciting, and you don't want to miss out on it.
So what happens now then? So we talk a little bit more, and you've
So
got to
right
the
now,
21st?
I need to hear, this is what happens now is council's direction. What do you want us to do? I mean, we still have, we have to start writing the grant proposal, but you just have to let us know what direction.
Councilman Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is it possible we can get a more detailed staff report? I think it's a glorious opportunity, and I think it's a windfall if we get the grant to put the library over at the MCC. How exactly we do it, all the details, yeah, we'll have to work them out. But I think we have to proceed, and That basically is my motion. Whether we need a staff report to have them come back, staff come back to council, just to confirm it, I'm not sure at this stage.
Yeah, so we just have to do it like sooner rather than later because of the timeline. And reports are due tomorrow for the 21st, which this one can't be done for tomorrow. I don't know if there's an exception there, Nancy, for us to bring the report, like, because I have to get a hold, it's the architects, they're key, and then it's us working with the library and seeing what spaces we can utilize.
So, Ms. Quinlan, so here's another out-of-the-box kind of thing. What would the present situation of the library, if we could somehow move everything out of there, what would be, I mean, it's only got 20 parking spots now. I suppose the answer is that that footprint would not be big enough to put a new library there.
Well, the current footprint was the 10,000, what are you saying, Mary? 10,500. The first column is the current footprint that exists right now, right? So, and we were saying, so that's what we were looking at. We thought it was about 9,500. We were looking at, 8,000, close to that number. And now, what was new to us is that they came back and said it's almost 15,000. That's what's new to us.
Yes. Well, what happens, okay, so we go one more up on the, if we did use that footprint and we went one more floor up on that library footprint, you'd get it.
Yeah, we'd have to have another elevator. That'd be.
Pardon me?
You have to ask me. No, you just need a different.
Well, you'd have an elevator, but you'd be putting it in a brand-new building. That's the thing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when my friend Gordon and I looked at it, we have 6,000 square feet from the walkway back, if we count the first and top floor, if we do something internally, and then we could do something externally. So there's a lot of potential for alterations plus a building standing beside it.
Yeah, but then if you did add another second floor on it.
I don't think it's necessary, but those are options, there's a lot of details.
Yes.
Are you talking about the mezzanine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talking about the mezzanine.
And then we have to just see if the building structurally can handle it. That's the other thing too.
Right.
Or what building structure?
Like the MCC, if you're going to extend the mezzanine, is the building, what needs to be done to the building to put that mezzanine in?
Yes, Yes, Councillor Hahn?
Through you, Mr. So we're all thinking just off the top of our heads right now, and that's great for a little jam session. But I guess I'd like to also hear what our CAO thinks of this and our path forward at this juncture.
The recent history of the corporation, the town of Pelham, has been to create the MCC, which is a stunningly beautiful facility characterized with enormous financial problems and clearly inadequate investigation into the actual costs of so operating. The purpose of this presentation is to get council's endorsement for a number of identifiable projects. Most of what you've been presented with tonight is already in our capital forecast. It is things that this council and future council will spend money on. So the idea of getting those grants to have 70-odd cents on the dollar covered is an enormous improvement for the community and the financial well-being of this organization. The partial exception to that is the $650,000 item that would be new bathrooms and meeting space immediately adjacent to this wall. But at this facility, to support the premier cultural events in the community that are Summerfest, supper markets, Thursday nights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But understand that what you're being asked, if you endorse these things and we receive these grants, you are essentially promising to come up with the 23%. 27, beg pardon. That's what is being said here. If we get the grant, you're committing to the monies. We don't have that information for this project. If you wish a staff report now, we're at the height of the budget process. We're at the height of issues on cannabis. We are weeks away from dealing with gypsy moth in the public meeting, Every single senior staff resource is 100% fully engaged. We're all running at 100%. If it is the will of this council to have a report back, Ms. Quinlan has done yeoman's work drawing a number of people and organizations together to be able to present you with this much. And that is on top of the fact that she is presenting you with budgets, like the busiest time of a busy job, and still managed to do this. If it is your will that you would like to hear more about this, please direct some resources, some monies, so that we can get some sort of proper architectural concepts, et cetera, et cetera. But you actually need to hear the business. Frankly, your question is, what is my thoughts? My thoughts are we are enormously too late on this one. And this is a future project to look at for this community. And in the here and the now, $650,000 for bathrooms and meeting space immediately outside this building would be a big step up because it's not specifically in the capital, but it is shovel ready, as Ms. Quinlan says. We know we can do that. We know we have the space, we know we have the need, we know we can enhance our premier events already. What we don't know is the cost of this. What we don't know is the sale price of the potentially empty library. What we don't know is the cost of the additional extra parking. What we don't know is how many 1,000 square feet. It takes years. It takes a year and a half to come up with that sort of business plan properly, where the public is properly consulted, or you do more work. We will. Ms. Quinlan has really done a good job on this so far. Like I'm really impressed, frankly, with several senior staff members who've come together. Ms. Van Ravensway, people at the library have done an excellent job. And yet, this thing is due in 3 weeks. So if you want to have more information, please resource it, and we will outsource it because it's not going to be done very well by us in the next 10 days. In fact, we'll do quite a poor job, although we will try to do well. But that's reality. That's the reality. In the future, this could be a great project for the community. And absolutely, I say this as someone who's toured 5 of these facilities and trying to build one for a different municipality. And this was the only one that didn't have the library as part of it. And they all swore the library was a critical cog to their success. The vision is a beautiful one that the town of Pelham deserves. But I don't know how to deliver that in less than 3 weeks. That isn't writing a blank check. That isn't making we still don't have our financial house in order with the MCC, let alone the library. And so there is the CAO, also known as wet blanket.
So I guess further to that, then my second question would be, knowing then that with the ask and the impending, I guess, policy that has to be the accessibility to the library, it's what, 2 years, 3 years, something like that, with the elevator, that kind of thing? Yeah, so that, it's 5 years?
25.
Okay, so that's the other consideration, is that, you know, we have to make that consideration. That's where that lies.
And the other consideration is that this is probably a once-in-a-generation grant. That's the whole thing. This isn't gonna come around again for
In
a long,
the
long
next 10
time.
years, we won't have the 5 million, whatever money that's available now to even consider the library.
So what kind of money would we need
us
to
resources.
put against a resource? Like, you must have a ballpark as far as what we would need to say, okay, go find someone to put some perspective behind this. What are we looking at?
Well, we would hire the existing architects because they have all of the drawings and they have that. So it would be Petrov that we'd be working with on some ideas of where we'd come up with the 14,000 square feet or 12,000 square feet, whatever we need. We need to really sit down and look at the actual footprint of what the library is, and, you know, are there other spaces that we currently have in the community center that we don't have to replicate?
Do we have a
with the library?
ballpark cost on that to
Pardon?
liaise with this individual, Petrov?
Well, no, I haven't, I've just talked to her about some ideas, but I need to come here first.
And then, of course, the timeline. When do you have to have this grant in?
But this grant, I mean, what we need is to bring to council to say, this is, you know, first of all, is it possible to get the 14,000 square feet at all in that building? That's the first thing. And if the answer is no, you know, and can the library live with 12,000? If the answer is no, then that makes things, you know, the decision gets a little bit easier.
Councillor Wink?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a great opportunity. However, no matter what we do, we're doing a knee-jerk reaction to something, and it's not thought through properly or whatever. I don't see how we can actually put something together within the 3 weeks to satisfy this grant, and while even if we hire someone from the outside. So yeah, it was an opportunity. We didn't know about the opportunity, but sometimes you just have to let it go.
What about one more? So then, I guess the other thing, okay, so let's forget, I mean, sooner or later, if we don't do this, then we do know we have to do something with that, meaning the old library. So perhaps, if we're going to pass on this grant, which is understandable, then we better think of what we're going to do for renovations then, and maybe perhaps, because that is part of the grant also, if we renovate, Madame
No, we put that in there. We put in 500,000 for the elevator and downstairs, and then about 300,000. I have to confirm that with Amy about renovating the upstairs.
So we just leave that in the grant.
Yeah, we leave at least that.
Yeah.
Bob?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to spend the $10, $20, or $25,000 in the next 3 weeks on an opportunity that won't come around again. I'm prepared to put out a motion to spend the funds to do that, because I think this is an opportunity of a lifetime.
And don't forget, oh, sorry,
Opportunity of a lifetime's only come around once in a lifetime.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Trophy.
Yeah, I can see everybody's point about that, but spending $20,000 or $30,000 to get 3 weeks worth of work done, I don't know who can get 3 weeks worth of, or $30,000 worth of work done in 3 weeks. That's going to be proper. And there's a lot of work to do there to get it down to 14, or get it up to 14,000 square feet and design it and.
well, no, we're not designing it. I mean, I think what we need to do, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, what we need to do is determine whether, the feasibility of is the actual space there and available for us to accommodate that. The design comes afterwards.
So that's going to cost $20,000 or $30,000?
I don't think that's what,
No,
I don't think so.
I'm just throwing a, I
He's
don't
just
think it'll
throwing
come
money
anywhere
out.
near
He's just
that.
throwing
I
a
don't
number
think
out. We need to sit down with Petrov and say, okay, this is the building we have. Can we actually do it? Is there enough,
Yeah.
And I can come back with that number, but,
Mr. CAO.
If it is the will of council to put forward a motion to provide us with resources to try to bring back as much of a plan as we can professionally draw together in the limited time available to us, may I suggest twofold, that you firstly include wording in the motion so as to waive our purchasing policy and direct the treasurer and the office of the CAO to initiate contracts as they deem appropriate. And what we would attempt to do is both, there's a conversation to be held self-evident with the architect, but beyond that, to either buttress the architect or to have any, some type of space consultant come up with a report, a quick and dirty report, but a report indicating the rough value of the existing library, the rough construction cost to add on to the MCC, something about moving costs, and whatever quick analysis can be done on as to operating costs and implications thereof. I would imagine $30,000. We waive some money at consultants. They will in fact work really quickly. It's just that the hourly rate goes up, and $30,000 would provide a reasonable amount of resources for the two of us to find people that do that work and give us some sort of advice. If that's the will of council, I remain the wet blanket, but I would like to give you a path forward if that's your preference. So we do need to waive purchasing, and I would think 30,000 actually is the appropriate number.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the treasurer, do we have the $30,000? I know we found $10,000 for the cannabis committee, but do we have another 30?
well, we do through the supplemental revenue is above the budget. And while we don't know how much it's gonna be,
We don't.
I mean, we don't know.
It could be more than 30.
I can get a
Could
quote,
be
I
less.
can get a quote from the architect.
Well, myself, I think we should jump, myself, just because it's a once in a lifetime, 10 million bucks. If we can't put $30,000 out to see just what this is. I mean, even if we scrap the library plan, but go with this, well, so be it. It's still gonna be a heck of a, grant, but my own self, I mean, obviously council decides, I think this is a once in a lifetime, and if we can, we've been very lucky, we've been very well getting these other grants, we seem to be on a winning streak, so, but that's my thoughts anyway, is put a little bit of risk into it and see what happens, but.
I know that, Vicki, when you met with the ministry folks at your regional meeting, didn't she say that they're looking for projects with co-location? So you were talking about that. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we met as a regional rec meeting, and the ministry was there, and she gave updates on the proposed grant, and I mentioned, you know, the possibility of this might happening, and, you know, how do you feel about it? And these are exactly what they're looking at, is partnerships, bringing, you know, a community hub together. And the other thing is that what's really great about this grant is the funding is up till 2027 or 28. Like, it's years. So it isn't like, okay, next year, we got to come up with all this money. You know, then you can see what they did approve and go from there. We know that the library has, you know, $1 million worth of upgrades over the next 4 or 5 years, and you know, I thought it was a great opportunity to complete our hub. Whether it's the time to do it or not is another story, but I believe that there could be space, shared space that we could work on, probably more than the library realizes right now. And also, if we needed, we know that our atrium costs us a lot of money and energy loss, and this would be a good way of incorporating that, as well as we could go out the front if we used that, if it really needed to be larger than what we expected. But it's just an opportunity. That's, yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments? Or should, I guess the next step is to get a motion if we're going to proceed. Councilor, would you be interested in putting a motion before council?
Yes, I will make the motion per the wording from the Mr. CAO.
Okay, and before we begin, is there anyone who will second this motion?
I haven't even heard it yet.
Pardon?
I haven't even heard it yet. How can?
I guess we're waiting for you to make a
Can I
motion.
just add something
Yep.
before you do? I think it's critical, though, if we're going to waive, I guess, in the sense of time, to waive our purchasing for someone to do this, again, we've just been spitballing here, that it's critical that whoever does it, should we involve the existing architect Petrov, that they understand that this still will be going out to tender, that the final job will go out to tender, that there's no way, no how, that this guarantees them the work in the end, but that really now we're just getting some consultant work to find out the feasibility of doing this in the first place.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from my past experience, you normally would engage the architect that has built the building. You don't go, because to go out for tender, get a new architect, I mean, that's something you don't normally do. I don't know, Jason, your experience on that? Like for an addition to the building that they just built, and then to go out and get another architect, and, I mean, that they know the building inside out. But that's from my experience of, like, there was a building that, you know.
Okay. Thank you.
And that I would echo support to our treasurer. There's always the economic fairness argument about having, you know, a new clean RFP in the future. but that's usually outweighed in this instance by the practicality and the pragmatism of having the expert on the building also be the designer, the architect of any expansion there too, it's more important to get the building right than a perfect, I say this and I've never met this architect.
So then a
either, but
constructor has to be tendered.
Yes.
that would be
Okay,
absolutely.
so maybe put that in there, so
Yeah,
they're
that is
using the
absolute.
architect, but not necessarily just going out and giving Paul the work. You can
Right.
tender on it, but it's not a given, okay?
Okay, Mr. CAO, are you going to draw us up a motion?
That staff be directed to return to council by, help me with the date, Madam Clerk?
October 21st is the next meeting,
Oh, we're not gonna manage that.
so then it would be November I think it's the 4th? November the 4th.
By November the
When's the grant
4th. Grant's due on the 12th. Yeah. And whoop, there we are. I don't see a
Can we
better
have
world
it-
than the 4th, though.
We can always have a special meeting.
That's not enough time. I mean, can we have a special meeting for it?
Committee of the whole one on the 28th.
Proposals? Hold on the hat.
Council has meetings scheduled for the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 28th. There is a special committee of the whole meeting on the 28th of October.
What's the purpose of the 28th one, Madam Clerk?
Budget.
The operating budget.
Onto a budget meeting?
Sure.
October
Okay.
28th.
Then staff be directed to report back, to return back on October the 28th with a special report, rather than call it a special meeting, we can just tag this in support of which council waives both its publishing deadline and the purchasing policy, so that Petrov and Associates, or I might have the name wrong, and an as yet unidentified third-party consultant can produce documentation in support of a report that shall examine the feasibility of relocating the main branch of the Pelham Public Library to the MCC facility with a budget not to exceed $30,000 to be paid, or sorry, would the treasurer prefer a budget variance that is offset by?
Yeah, just do a budget variance, and but we have the revenue from the supplemental revenues.
There we have it. To be ultimately financed by a budget variance, money specifically coming from
The supplemental revenues.
supplemental revenues.
So Bob, you'll back that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
So we need a seconder for this motion. Is there a seconder? Councilor Hahn will second. Any other discussion before I call the vote?
Can you, sorry, can you just read that motion one more time? I just want to make sure, 100% clear.
I will do my best. That staff be directed to return to council by October 28th with a special report in support of which council waives its publishing deadline and the purchasing policy so that Petrov Architect and as yet to be identified third party are enabled to examine the feasibility of relocating the Pelham Main Library branch to the Meridian Community Center with budget variance not exceeding $30,000 to be financed through supplemental revenues.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine.
Any discussion on this motion? Okay, so I'll ask for a vote on this motion. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. All those against? Thank you. Okay, so full steam ahead, and let's see what we turn up. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, you also have the motion that was included with that report.
Okay. Motion put forward by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be resolved that council receive report number 2019-0099, corporate services, and council approve the list of capital projects for the grant submission of the ICIP, Community Culture and Recreation Stream. Any, yes, Councillor Hahn?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, there's just one more thing that I'm again, we've been thinking out loud a lot here tonight, so why stop? But, and that is if we're using the MCC as a hub for transit right now, for students and such to get from A to B, and there's also a lot of plans in the works with the region moving forward. I know there's lots of things going on. In fact, they were supposed to present tonight. I'm just wondering if there's been any items then put in play on your line items there with regards to again, a shelter or something of some sort, or a paved area, a holding area for people. If there's going to be a lot more people using buses, or if that's what we anticipate, whether they're students or seniors or what have you, there's going to be a lot more movement and traffic going in and out of the parking lot. There should be some sort of shelter where people can get on and off the bus, that kind of thing.
Okay, we'll include that.
Because transit's obviously an item here, so that should be an item.
They're obviously then thinking we should put the shelter in part of the grant process.
Yes, that's
Yep.
what I'm referring to, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay, yes, Councillor.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Correct, Mark, so we put this in the grant process and we are given the grant. And we are committed to it, correct?
It's correct.
Our
yeah.
26%.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so more things that we just keep adding to this list is still more money for the town. Right, and I don't know if shelter would be a big priority because they can just go inside of the MCC. There's tons of meeting space and gathering space and all kinds of stuff in there.
So where does the bus pull up at this juncture? Like it pulls up and blocks the entranceway, or where do people get on and off the bus? Like how does that work? I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the buses are pulling in front of the community center right on the road at Meridian Way right at the moment, and both sides. It's very active.
So they don't actually go in the parking
No,
lot
they
area
do
at all?
not go, they avoid the parking lot area just because of people and everything. They need to keep on time, so they stay.
So a bench would suffice, is what you're trying to say.
Bench would suffice.
A bench then, there you go. Maybe our beautification committee can add to that. Right, we were talking about benches earlier. Boom, done. Problem solved.
Okay. Director of Public Works, yes, Mr. Mark?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to answer the councillor's question, we have looked into costing for bus shelters, and it's in the order of magnitude of $15,000 for a small shelter. So that's the order of magnitude that we're speaking of with respect to cost for a shelter.
Okay, yep, thank you. So,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are we adding it or?
I don't know,
I want to know before we.
Madam Finance, you think we should throw that on, or what's your feeling?
I think that
Oh, I
the
guess
council-
it's up there, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think this is an opportunity for us to, people are putting in for community centers right now, okay? There's $50 million for a community center that people are actually submitting for. Our community center is built. So what else do we need to complete our community center is the opportunity that we have here right now.
Okay,
Even though it's gonna cost the money, the town 27% of the cost, but it's over 9 years. And also, hopefully, when we get the money, it's gonna offset the things that we now don't have to pay for, which we're putting everything in the list there. The pool and all that, that's money that's saved in the town. This is an opportunity that just can't be missed. So we have to think of all the things that we need to do that we can't do afterwards. That's why, we put the generator in there. The community center doesn't have a generator. We know we need a generator. Let's put the generator in. So we just have to be able to take advantage of this, just like we got the $4 million for Pelham Street South. I mean, when we were doing the application, Jason and I were thinking like, that's, is it possible that we could even get that? And we got it. But if you don't try, you just, it's just a great opportunity. And I've been through this before, and we have a great story here. We really do. The library at the community center is a great story.
thank you. So, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, further to that then, so, this council, of course, wasn't in when the decisions were made to build the MCC, but prior to the MCC, my understanding is there was a lot of community consultation as to what would they like to see at the MCC, what was it going to consist of, was there going to be a pool, was there going to be racket sports, so on and so forth. So has anyone gone back to that information to see what the community wants? It's all well and good, you know, the people at this table can spitball, but what do our citizens actually want? So can we look at that list, or have we looked at that list at all, just to see what other items, and they don't have to be grandiose, but what other items maybe
Yeah, we
folks
could,
want?
Vicky would have it, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I have. That list.
So did we just find out this information just like in the past week or so? Like, did this grant just come
Yeah,
to
it just
us?
came out, yeah.
It just came out.
It came out to us through Mr. Mayor, a few weeks ago, and then, you know, we had to schedule it here to come to council. So we met right away when the grant came out, which was, I think, in mid-September, end of September. Yeah.
Because I know some people wanted a weight room, you know, you can use some exercise equipment, that kind of thing. You know, we've got our pool, outside pool, that kind of thing, or racket room, or all those kinds of things. Was that weighed, like, is that consideration, or have you guys talked about any of this?
So the only challenge we also have is we have a limited amount of space around it. There's not a lot of things we can do. So the library just came out just from discussion and saying, you know, wouldn't that be a great idea if we can do that with the library, just knowing that we're going to spend, as we said, about $1 million that they need to, you know, towards the old building, which is 30 years old. And then don't forget the efficiencies that can happen. I'm just thinking of the volunteers. You're going to have the seniors there in that building, and they can volunteer in the library, and that will help reduce some of the operating costs for the library in perpetuity. You know, so it's just a great, it's win-win for everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, in our budget consultation, there was a fencing that came up, steel fencing for around it. Why could we not put that into
It is in
this?
there. It is.
It is in there?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Then we'd avoid it from,
yeah, and then we save it for next year.
Okay, so before we do this, is council agreeable to follow Councillor Hans and put the bus shelter on the list? I guess that was one thing that we're thinking of. Does anyone have any reason why they don't want to put it on the list? Let's put it that way, and then we want, okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, so
Yep,
let's
okay.
say we're gonna put it on the list, then.
Yep.
Excellent,
15 grand, we got 9 years to do it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing.
sorry.
Seems like a bit of a given, but.
We could also ask to add the covering for the ice surface.
Yes,
Yeah, and I've got that too, the covering of the ice.
yes, we should vote on that.
So if you could just add those two through
Yes.
a motion,
Oh, okay.
then we'll have it.
So, Madam Clerk pointed out that the Councilor Wink also mentioned the ice surfacing for the big arena, or the ice cover for the big arena. So we're gonna put that on this motion, the ice cover,
So if
and,
you could do that as an amendment, the ice cover and the bus shelter as an amendment to the motion, vote on that, and then the motion is amended.
but then we need motions and seconders, right?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, to add the bus shelter and the ice surface covering to the list would be an amendment, and then the motion as amended.
Okay. Councillor Heidelberg, will you move to put this amendment on? Okay,
yes, Your Honor.
okay. And do we need a second?
We do, we're in council.
Yeah. Councillor Winkwell?
So this is for a motion to add the bus shelter to the list as well as the ice surface covering.
Okay. So any discussion on those two items? Okay, not seeing any, I call the vote. We'll add the ice cover and the bus shelter onto the grant. All those in favor? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, and then to vote on the amended resolution. Be it resolved that council receive report number 2019-0099 corporate services, and council approve the list of capital projects, including the ice cover for the Occipitor Arena and the bus shelter for the grant submission of the ICIP Community Culture and Recreation Stream. Any other debate on this? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. Let's there we go, unfinished business, new business, are we down to 14 in the clerk?
There's one item of new business
Oh, the lawn sign.
that was added by Council.
So, yeah, so now we come down to 13, item of new business. This was added by Councillor Hahn, and it's under the lawn signs. And perhaps the fire chief can give us some background on this, please?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just looking for the picture of this sign. So we received some concerns from residents about some cannabis signs popping up around town. They basically say, tell council or something about council and no more grows in Pelham and blah, blah, blah. So is it against our sign bylaw? Should we enforce it? Shouldn't we enforce it? There is some, our sign bylaw is fairly old and there's some weak language in there. We've never really had this type of sign. It just, the election side last year, 2 years ago, came up with some new wording that has allowed third parties to put signs on the front lawns that speak against another party or person. But our sign bylaw really doesn't have that. It's not under signs being required a permit, but under the prohibition, prohibited signs, there is some language that you're not allowed to put anything on your front lawn that distracts drivers, like stop, alert, or any language there that's similar. So I'm looking, basically, do we let it go and not do anything about it, or if we want to enforce, then we need that on be all on the same page in what we're going to do. So the process would be I'd have to issue an order for a couple days to have them remove the sign. Just can't show up and remove it because it's private property. If it's on the town boulevards, we can remove it right away, but if it's on private property, we have to serve a letter, give them days. It says, tell town council, no more cannabis grows in Pelham, and then there's some social media links. So,
Well, you're just looking for direction from council then?
because I have it coming in for both sides.
Yes.
This gentleman's selling these signs to people that want to put them on their front lawn, and then we have people calling in saying, this is a contravention of our sign bylaw. You don't let me put signs on my lawn, but you're letting these people put signs on their lawn, so.
Okay, yep, thank you. Debate on this issue, councilors, or thoughts on this issue? Councilor Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, how many of these signs are we talking about that are out there?
I have no idea at this point. This gentleman just put it up on the thing and he's selling them for $15 cash. And there are a number of them because they've brought some attention to other residents, so I don't know if I can give you an exact number.
I mean, off the top, I would think that we have to be consistent. I can remember when we had, when we were doing East Vaughan Hill, and Food Basics came in here and they wanted to do a different sign, and we've had other people come in and we said, well, I'm sorry, this is the sign bylaw. So I guess, do we want to be consistent in enforcement at the same time? There's two sides to it. Oh, go ahead, Mr. CAO.
If you were to ask my opinion, I would strongly advise against this council considering having a vote as to direct staff to engage in any law enforcement activity. I actually don't think you have jurisdiction to do so, to be abundantly clear. I don't think you can order people, your enforcement staff to enforce or not enforce something. What I do think would be fruitful at this point in time is for you to have your debate about the general topic of whether or not you are cognizant of there being a cannabis challenge in this community. And having had that discussion, you could perhaps consider directing staff to draft a new, more enforceable sign bylaw and to return with that finished product to you by late November, early December of this year. And that would be good use of all of our time.
Comments on the CAO comments? Councilor Hildebrand.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I would make that motion.
Okay. Okay. Well, And then I guess,
I need a seconder.
a seconder on this? Counselor Stewart. Is there also, if I can ask while we're getting the motion, for, now this is directed to you, Chief, for election signs, I guess the only deadline is, or is there a deadline to get them down?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a time frame to put them up and there's a time frame to take them down.
Okay.
So, and just further that, the bylaw speaks to, we have the option not to enforce. We don't have to enforce it.
Yeah.
Just, we get, since it's such a sensitive topic and very passionate to a lot of people, just, I guess we're in a catch-22 situation.
Yes, okay. Does the CAO see any benefit in putting a timeline that a person could put the lawn sign up? Let's say we say, okay, you can put these signs, but they 60 days. It's got to be. Is that feasible, or is that outside the realm?
A properly crafted sign bylaw considers all interests, from corporate advertisements to political slogans to expressions of conscience, and tries to balance those with the general community desire to have an attractive community and to not have sort of sign pollution, for lack of a better phrase. We will do our very best, if you pass this motion, to come back with a bylaw that hopefully balances those two tensions, and both the private concerns and the public concern. So it's never good policy to react to the matter instantly before oneself. It's better to deal with it in the abstract, in the theory, so that the next time round, whatever the next issue, we have a default, in this case, robust sign bylaw that governs the approach.
Councilor Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, is there any bylaw in place right now that restricts people from putting up a garage sale or yard sale sign? Because these signs, I believe, I've seen a picture of it, that are no bigger than that. Just don't know if we're getting into a whole can of worms here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our sign bylaw doesn't speak to garage sale signs. They're usually like a 1-day, 2-day thing. They're up and gone. We do remove stuff off poles if it's on town property or in boulevards, stuff like that, but again, it's weekend events. We don't have bylaw stuff that work on weekends, so people probably get away with more on weekends than they do during the week, so forth, so.
Just plug for staff.
Any other comments? No? Okay, so we got them also, perhaps you could read the motion, Madam Clerk?
Through Mr. Mayor, motion made by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Stewart, that staff be directed to develop a new sign bylaw, including more enforceable language, and present it to council for consideration by December of 2019.
Okay. Any further discussion on this bylaw? Oh, Councilor Trophy.
This question, through you, Mr. Mayor, be for the CEO. Do we have time, the staff have time for this? You were just saying how busy everybody is, and to go through this by December. Like, we're talking about a sign.
We can sleep when we're dead.
Okay.
No, we appreciate the sentiment, but it's really important to have enforceable bylaws, and where there's challenges to that, that ought to be addressed. That is a basic purpose of governance, and with your direction, that rises to the top of our pile, and other things go down. And I think it certainly behooves this community to have an enforceable sign bylaw, so I think that's our time very well spent.
If we would have probably had some good enforceable bylaws in place, these signs probably wouldn't be up. Anyways.
Okay, so any other further discussion? Not seeing any. On the motion, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on. So, presentation and consideration of bylaws. There we go. Motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the council of the town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw number 4161, 2019, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement for the lands located at 1 Highway 20 West, Regional Road 20, and 1806183 Ontario Inc., file number SP-05-19. And number 2, bylaw number 4163, 2019, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in right of the province of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Province of Ontario Community Transportation Grant Program. Any questions or comments on this? Not seeing any, I call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Motion put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being a bylaw number 4164, 2019, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 7th day of October 2019. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. This is the one we wanted. Councillor, motion put together by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for the 21st of October at 5:30 p.m. All those in favor? All those opposed? This meeting is adjourned.